Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to COP29. My name is Christoph Winterhalter. I'm ISO's Vice President Policy. And today we're going to talk about an interesting idea. I mean, what I learned personally at COP is to understand the value of international standards. To realize all these ideas and put them into practice, we need common standards. We need a common language. But what I experienced like 2 years ago is that there's a lot of standardization initiatives all over the place. So what we have done this year is to have a standards pavilion, inviting all those standardizers to come together, to align their initiatives. That's not easy. And it will take time to align the different thoughts, to align the methodologies, how to approach standards, and how to map them to regulation. But now we're going to present to you a different approach, like a shortcut. How we map these different things and use technology like artificial intelligence to find the connection between the different standards approaches. I'm not going to do that. That's going to be done by an expert, my colleague Adam from Standards Australia. Adam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christoph, and good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many of you here and so many of you from outside of the standards community. I mean, this is a really important week for us as we embed ourselves right in this COP process. So as Christoph said, my name is Adam Stingemore. I'm the Chief Development Officer from Standards Australia, and it's also great to have a lot of people joining us here this afternoon online. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the role of standards in our economy. I'm going to be focused on the built environment, but my first point and my first takeaway for you all, and as I've spent the week here at COP and have been at previous COPs before, everyone is trying to solve a whole bunch of problems in silos. And everyone is working on their thing, which is really important. We're not going to get to solutions unless we are solving some of these problems directly, but we also need to look holistically, and we need to think about how we might be able to do this in a way that makes a lot of sense. And the other thing I'm going to start by saying is that in order to solve this problem right now, and I'm a standards guy, I do not think we need any more standards. I think we've got enough standards out there operating. There's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, but in solving this decarbonisation problem, I think we should just take a moment to reflect on how all of these efforts might come together. Now, why does the built environment matter in this conversation? There are many statistics. The one that I like to use is that the built environment accounts for about 21% of greenhouse gas emissions, and around the world post-pandemic, we have seen a lot of construction activity. We've heard a lot of talk about decarbonisation. There's a lot of goodwill. I don't think we've yet to see any significant shift in the carbon footprint of construction globally. There's a lot of work. Every time I've been walking around here this week, not every time, a lot of times this week when I've been walking around COP, I've heard people in sectors a long way from me talking about the thing that in my sector we think we're trying to solve, and they're trying to solve it. There's 1,000 different conversations going on at the moment around data, around metrics, and around how we're going to be able to share those data and metrics. There's a lot of cost pressure in the construction and infrastructure sector globally, again, going back to some of the challenges that we had through the pandemic. And within my own community and the people that I talk to, I think there's a growing recognition of industry, there's a growing recognition of governments that we actually do need to do something about this. In some communities, the people who are supposed to be solving the problem are dealing with 416 different policy papers a week asking the same question. And that is a symptom of a shift. That is not a criticism at all of any of those efforts, but we're not actually seeing this piece sort of come together yet. And then, of course, the market stability piece and the opportunity that we have to be able to work together towards common solutions. So the ISO model, of course, is based around all countries working together to come to a single solution. That's quite challenging at the moment in many respects and for a number of different reasons. Anyone in the room? Tell me about the picture that I put up the top there. What is it? Andy? Silos. They are silos. But they're kind of connected. I spent a lot of time finding that picture, I've got to tell you. And I think at this COP, for me, that is the green shoot that I see, that there's a lot of work going on in these silos, but they're starting to connect. At the standards pavilion here that's been brought to us by ISO, by IEC and by UL, and with a lot of other partners and hosted by our dear friends here in Azerbaijan, we've had people coming to talk to us about standards. They don't really know what they are, some of them, and I say that with the greatest respect, but they know that we need to work together across those silos to help to solve this problem. Now I'm going to stop with the sort of macro piece, and I'm going to drill down a little bit now into the built environment. Supply chains is a big deal when we start to talk about sustainability reporting in the built environment. But it is not just a problem or a challenge for the built environment. We've got colleagues here from the mining sector who have a similar challenge when you start to think about supply chain and the transfer of data. If I was a manufacturer of a thing, I would not want to have to deal with 18 different reporting frameworks, excuse me, to come up with kind of the same number in kind of different systems. I don't think I'd want to do that. I think I would want to work within a single system that would help me to solve that problem. And there's a lot of really important local efforts going on to try and move the bar and to get us thinking about how we can start to manage the carbon piece and to manage the carbon piece in a way that makes sense in our local geographies and economies and regions. But that work needs to come together. I spent a lot of time in my day job in Australia, a developed economy, talking to people and businesses about how they're going to be able to deal with some of this reporting stuff. And there are three types of organisations that I talk to. There are those who are multinational and sophisticated, and they spend a lot of time thinking about their sustainability footprint, and they're all over this. And some of them are frustrated about the way that this is coming together at the moment. There are other companies and organisations who know that they need to do something. They have people and resources available to do it. And there are other companies who ask me what I'm talking about. And that's a genuine point, that in Australia, a developed economy, there's still this massive delta of understanding of how we're going to fix this. Now, if I had a small business, I had 4 employees, I was in the construction supply chain, do you think I'm going to hire a 5th employee to do all of my sustainability reporting? No, I don't think that's going to happen. So to this community, to those of you from the standards community, we need to think about ways that we can help those people to solve their problems through the good use of standards, but I don't necessarily expect that good use of standards would mean that they will join our technical committees and be right in the heart of our community. I don't think that's going to happen either. We need to sort of think a little bit beyond that. Now, my last point here in setting the scene is that this is a sectoral issue for the construction and infrastructure sector, but it's a sectoral issue for everybody, and we all need to work together. So, we had a vision at Standards Australia with colleagues from the US that there could be a better way of looking at all of these local efforts, of all of the different standards and rules and regulations that are changing. And with every COP announcement this week, we're hearing of new things that are happening and new regulations that we might be seeing. How can we work in that environment and at the same time provide solutions to the market that doesn't require us to go off and start writing different standards in all these different sectors? Now, we have connected into the United Nations Transparency Protocol System, which is an initiative of the UNECE. And the vision of this work is that we should be able to build an open protocol that acts as a platform to allow for the good use and the sharing of this data. Now, in many respects, that is anathema to the way that standards organisations would work. Standards organisations would perhaps sometimes start by saying, you know what, how do we solve this problem? We will write a new standard. I am not saying that we do not need to keep updating our standards. I'm not saying that they do not need to evolve and develop. I am saying that we need to really embrace this opportunity that we have at the moment as we look to decarbonise the construction sector, the building sector, and every other sector, to work with others and think about how our standards can be used within those environments to allow for people to solve problems. When I ask myself this question as a standards man, as I sometimes refer to myself, I ask the question in the context of, if I was a global chief financial officer in an organisation that worked in multiple geographies, that worked with multiple regulations and laws and issues, how would I deal with this problem? And I wouldn't deal with that problem in that chair by going and getting all of the different standards that exist in all of those geographies. I'd want something that could sort of come over the top of it and help me to solve that problem. And the United Nations Transparency Protocol, we think, is one way that we could leverage work of others to do that in this sector and others. I think of a chief sustainability officer, and I think of that role in a multinational company. And I think of all of the efforts that are going in within that community and outside of it to improve the sustainability reporting mechanisms and conformance and quality systems that exist. Put your hand up, dear friends, if you know which global sustainability protocol will prevail for the Earth. Somebody tell me. No. We need to work with the protocols that exist, and the way to do that is to bring it all together. So, I've got about 6 minutes here to bring this all together. How do we work with technology to help decarbonise the built environment? We need to focus our efforts on the things that matter globally. And for product manufacturers, that's getting a handle on their product and their supply chain. for regulators and for lawmakers, it's about setting systems that allow for the market to respond, and those systems should include the good use of standards. I don't think that it's time to pick winners within any of these frameworks because they're still evolving. So if we need people to focus their efforts here on fixing their own affairs, and we need governments to make good decisions based around standards, what can we do as a community to help? We can make sure that our standards are there and available and open and able to help the chief financial officers and the chief sustainability officers operating in a global context or in a local context solve their problem, while at the same time in Australia helping the person who drives the earth-moving truck, who is a sole business owner, helping that person to fit into this system as well. So as Christoph said at the top of this session, the international standards community is going to continue to focus its efforts on making sure that we grab this sustainability challenge, and we need to work with others. So I'm gonna get a microphone. We've already got a microphone. I'm going to pass that around in a second. But I just want to close with this. So today, with the International Codes Council, an SDO from the US, Standards Australia we released a white paper announcing an extension to the United Nations Transparency Protocol that we're seeking consultation on, and that we think is part of the efforts that can go towards the international standard system coming together to solve the problem in the built environment, but also to solve the problem more broadly, because the chief financial officers and the chief sustainability officers don't want to solve this problem in sectors that we predefine. So I'm going to ask for questions from the floor. Please throw them at me. I cannot hear you, Maria.
Hello? What is the biggest mistake that the standards community can make?
What a great question. The biggest mistake that the standards community can make, I think, not taking time to breathe and to look around at all the other efforts that are going on and connect with those efforts. So this week, we've seen a huge amount of collaboration and connecting of things. I think that also applies to how we allow for our standards to be used in software solutions and in other people's environments and products, while maintaining the core of our standards. And that's a global issue for every standards body, Maria, but thank you very much for the question.
Thanks, Adam. Just thinking from a mining sector perspective, and especially representing miners that operate across jurisdictions, across commodities, the standards landscape is definitely one that is rather unyielding and rather complex. What's your sense? Because I think there is broad and broadening recognition of the need of harmonization and consolidation. But we also have others with vested interests in the standards landscape that essentially make money off making standards. And certainly from in the mining world, it's created its own little cottage industry. What can we do? Is there something we can do about that? Or are we always going to have to just accept there are going to be commercial interests that doesn't want to see harmonization?
Yeah, okay. That is another great question. So let me answer that in 3 parts, John. So first of all, I think we need money to solve the climate crisis. So we need to make sure that we have capital available to be deployed to help us solve this problem. My second point is that ultimately it should be the market, based on data, that sorts out which schemes are best and most fit for purpose in different scenarios and environments, provided those schemes are developed with consensus and with multi-stakeholder engagement and all of the good things that we bring in this community, provided that's true. But then we need it all to line up, because I don't think anytime soon we're going to have a single answer to this problem, but the international standards community should open itself up to allowing for the stakeholders to help to shape things, and that's the opportunity that we have here. If we use open protocols and if we do allow that interoperability, it's much easier than, for instance, a single scheme being regulated in a particular jurisdiction as the one you must comply, and if you're operating in this jurisdiction and over there you've got another one, if you don't have that level of interoperability, it becomes really hard. It's a really good question.
So my question is related to your silos that you presented, connecting the silos. How do you go from today to a day where all the stakeholders that need to be connected are engaged and recognise the mutual interest in being involved?
I think we keep up the good work, and the good work is people working really hard to solve their domain problems, and at the same time making sure that we at the international level connect in the same way that those silos there connect, those domain efforts, and we don't duplicate effort. We don't want to see 4 sets of silos there, but I don't think the time is yet upon us where we're going to have the entire economy agreeing on a single way to solve a problem here, because they're still trying to solve it here. So if I go back to my example in Australia, really sophisticated companies understand what's going on. The next level down get it, and they know they need to do something, and then these people over here, they don't really know what's happening here yet. Not a criticism, but a fact. In that context, we can't have a single solution yet. I'm very conscious of time, dear friends. Any more questions? No, one more. Yeah.
I just want to pick up on the last point you made around, where you have different sizes of companies or actors. How do you make sure that the SMEs, or the really small actors, still join the journey? Because some of them might never become bigger than a small size company. How do you bring them along on that journey so they don't? Because otherwise it's so easy for them to say, well, I'm small, I will never have enough staff to do it, so I'm not going to care.
Yeah, no, so I think 2 ways. I think making sure that the representative organisations are involved in the processes is a good start. But then when we start to test concepts and prove things, you do not just choose the leading sustainability advocates. You go and pick someone who you think will have the greatest struggles, and you help them into the process and the system and take their feedback to build for others. And I think that's something that we don't do well in this community, and it's something that we really should actively try and do so that our outputs are much more accepted. 1 and then 2 and then we're done.
Thanks, Adam. I think it's a good idea to have more open data so everyone can really bring everyone up to speed to harmonize and also speed up standards development. But in the meantime, while we try to harmonize, there's also discussion about over-standardizing that might obstruct innovation. So what's your view on this?
I think that's a real issue, Colin. It's hard to give a sort of generalised answer to that point, but there are levels of over-standardisation and over-regulation, and there are areas where it is just not enough, or it is not connected enough. The way that I think we should try and solve that problem is ask ourselves, what are we trying to achieve, rather than it is now time to change this standard.
Hi, Adam. Thank you so much. Just a question. We heard about the importance of involving the private sector, but in a similar vein, involving governments. What practical steps in Australia have you taken to make sure that they are part of this paradigm shift?
I have a lot of personal empathy for governments, for people who work in governments at the moment. It's really hard. I think what we can do as a community is to demonstrate to them that we can help them solve their problems and they have a seat at the table. And the more that we're able to do that, and demonstrating that we can help them solve their problems is very different from saying to them, here is a standard and here is its forward. I think that they're craving solutions at the moment, and if we can provide credible opportunities for them to do that, that's fantastic. Friends, we're out of time. It's been a wonderful session this afternoon. Thank you all for joining, and I wish you a successful COP. Thank you so much.